Hey there, my name is Micah Miller. I am the creator of this pharmacy battle game that we will be discussing in this video. This is sort of the setup and expanded info supplement to my overview video. If you haven't already seen the pharmacy battle overview video, I'd suggest watching that first. It helps make this video make a lot more sense. So let's get into it. Repeat disclaimer, if you've just recently watched the other video, the images and texts and the exact wording of the cards and game pieces in this are subject to change. They already have changed since this was originally created. Right now we're in end of May 2018, and this presentation was originally made up in August 2017. So I've done about 3 major revisions since then. Right, so let's do an example scenario where we have 3 players who are the students, in this case represented by these avatar shadows. And the group, in this case, has 5 health points per player, 15 total. You see that this is a sliding scale to allow different group sizes to play without having an advantage or disadvantage. The facilitator also has that sliding scale, and in this case, they're starting off with 5 health points per player, so 15 life for the facilitator as well. Sentinel cards, in this case, have 5 health as well, and they're placed in front of each player, so that they are in between the player and the facilitator. In this case, some of the questions are going to be about pain, opioids, and other NSAIDs. And in the further video, we're going to switch it up again. I'm probably going to do a different subject just to demonstrate the different sorts of topics you can tackle. Alright, so I talked a lot about equipment choice in the overview video. Let's see that equipment choice sort of situation in action. Because before the battle even begins, all this is something that the players would have been thinking about is what they want to be bringing into battle. As a refresher, the basics are the student can equip 1 weapon, 1 armor, and 1 flask by default. And students are given these cards ahead of time. They have them to carry and keep and even doodle on, I guess, if they wanted to. But that way, hopefully, they'll be incentivized to really own the equipment and strategize outside of class time and talk with their fellow teammates about what they want to do. As far as the equipment cards themselves, let's just break this down. Each piece of equipment does something unique, but they share some common typography and some common elements. For example, top half of the equipment card, roughly, has the name of the particular piece of equipment, in this case the Brutal Battle Axe, the type of the equipment, in parentheses, just to keep things clear, that is, this is a weapon, and then some sort of unique picture. And then the bottom half is the really important game mechanics part, because it tells you what the equipment does, how to use it, how many tokens it starts off with, so on and so forth. It's all the information about the equipment. So in this case, this is an example of a piece of equipment. Most equipment is like this, but you start off the game placing 4 tokens. And in this case, I illustrated it in PowerPoint doing what I actually do in real life. I just use the little glass beads that you can put in like fish tanks or in vases and stuff. I use those as little tokens. Super cheap. It's kind of nice and fun to play with. But sorry, back to the point here. When the game starts, you place 4 tokens on this card. So now you know what to do to start with, but how do I use them? These tokens are removed during an attack to do a successful, or to do like an automatic free additional damage. So unlike if you were coming from the last video, I talked about critical hits where you could do 2 damage instead of 1. That required you to correctly answer an extra pharmacy question, and then you had the risk of answering incorrectly, and now you did 0 damage. Well, this is just sort of a sure thing. It's not the most flashy weapon, it's not the best weapon statistically, but it's for the sort of player who wants the sure thing. And once all the tokens are used up, the item stays in play, but obviously there's no token to satisfy the text on it. And the reason that isn't discarded or anything is you can actually, through various ways, put tokens back on cards, but until it has a token on it, really it's just sitting there and can't be used anymore. So let's talk about our equipment choice for our hypothetical Ari. If you're coming from the last video, it's changed just a little bit. For her weapon, she decides to take the Hero Sword because she's very confident. She knows it'll allow her to do extra damage, and she plans on doing a lot of critical strike chances. For her armor, she takes normal armor, just for a little bit of added protection. It protects her from nominally about 2 points of damage, so she can answer 2 questions wrong without affecting the group's health. And then for her flask, she decides to take a sharpening solution, which is something that I was talking about earlier. It allows her to put extra tokens onto her sword for later, whenever she needs it, or the sword or weapon of a teammate. It's up to her at the time. Alright, for the next player, let's check out the wizard that is called Tim. For his weapon, Tim decides to equip the Apothecary Staff, which, if you come from the last video, the Ari in the last video took the Apothecary Robes, which allows her to equip an extra elixir, or flask rather, but doesn't do anything on its own. The Apothecary Staff is the weapon version of that. So not only is he going to take the Apothecary Staff, he decides, I want to take the Apothecary Robes too. So he's going all in on the flasks, although he is all foregoing the ability to defend himself with armor by doing so. So by default, Tim could only equip 1 flask, but now that he's equipped the Apothecary Staff and Robes, he actually gets to equip 3. So he's sort of doing this jack-of-all-trades, flexible utility sort of role within the team by doing this. For our third player, we'll call him Jack. Jack decides to go with the Shield of Selflessness, which is a weapon, but is defensive and allows him to sort of intercept damage that another player would take, almost as if his weapon is armor for anybody in the group. So it's a very selfless group defending sort of choice to make. For his own armor, he decides to take normal armor for just a little bit of added personal protection. It's always a good choice. And then for his flask, he decides to take the Telepathy Tincture, which is going to allow 2 instances of group collaboration where the question would have been aimed at just one student and they had to answer it alone. By using this tincture, he would be allowing the entire group to join in. 3 heads are better than 1. It's a very group-focused loadout for Jack. So, with all these equipments chosen, hopefully this has all happened before hitting the table, or at least early at the start of a session. We've all decided these are equipment, come to the table, and we are ready to battle. So I need to spend a little bit of time talking about how the game gets set up, and hopefully you can work with the graphics here. I have some fun animations, hopefully it'll make it make a little bit more sense in your own mind. So essentially the game is played it can be played in a lot of different settings. I've played it in public places where there's like food and everything. I've played it in a classroom outside of class time, but the bare basics are what you need are some people, and really helps to have a table that has 2 sides on it. The facilitator sits on one side, the students group sits on the other. Facilitator places these sheets, and this is what they look like in real life too. One sheet is for the facilitator's avatar, has a place for the question deck and the attack target deck, and has the facilitator's health track. The other sheet is the group's health track. So the facilitator is the one that should be keeping track of everybody's health. That way, you don't leave it in the group's hands, which they have an incentive to maybe fudge some numbers. Also, the facilitator places out the sentinel cards in front of each player. And finally, the players place their equipment in front of themselves and put on all the tokens necessary that they need to do, and then you're pretty much ready to start going. Just to go into a little bit more detail, the facilitator's sheet looks like this. It's primarily used to track the health total in a very visible way because the students will be looking at it from across the table. And also, you use this sort of health token, you use whatever you want, but you place the token down on the starting area depending on how many starting players there are. In this example, there's 3 players, so 15 health. And then you place the 2 decks in their designated area. It's nothing important like they have to go there. It's just good to have a designated spot for anybody who's maybe newer at the game. And these are the question decks and the attack target decks. So just by sort of convention, there's no place officially for the discard piles, but just kind of placing the cards behind the pile has been what I've been doing. The player's health sheet is much more simple. It's basically just that health tracking that's flexible by the amount of players. So once again, 3 players in this time, so 15 health is our starting. Do remember that health is shared, so every time a single player takes damage that isn't prevented by armor or what have you, the entire group's health goes down. So it's not like, one person can be eliminated because they took damage early and then they sit the rest of the game out. Everybody's in it until the very last. So there's no reason to be selfish, and I think that's probably a good thing overall. Turn order. The game starts on the facilitator's turn, so facilitator acts first. In general, gameplay proceeds in a counterclockwise direction. Looks something like that with the table. That way all the students looking on are going kind of from left to right. It seemed to be the most natural way to do it. The facilitator at the beginning of their turn will draw one attack target card per player and reveal them one at a time and then resolve them. So for this first one that's in front of Ari, this is an attack one random hero card, so it's only going to be one question targeted at one player. To determine that player, all the players roll a 20-sided die, and this attacks the target who rolled the lowest. So in this case, you have the middle one, the wizard, Tim. Even though that's not the attack target card in front of him, he is the target of this attack because he rolled the lowest. In this case, this question comes up talking about opioids potency. As a reminder, the student themselves would not see the options. They would be read the options in the text by the facilitator, so obviously they're not going to see what the answer is or what's the point. To continue the turn order, once one attack target card per player has been resolved, it becomes the student's turn to attack. So, it's again counterclockwise, so kind of left to right. Students can choose where they go. In this case, Ari attacks the facilitator, Tim attacks the sentinel in front of him, and Jack attacks the sentinel in front of Tim. So they've cleared the way for Ari, and now they're trying to clear the way for Tim. Once all the students have attacked, turn is over, very simple, and the play goes back to the facilitator, who puts out another round of attack target cards in front of all of the players, and the whole thing starts again. So hopefully that's not very complicated. Next up, eventually, I will find my way into making a third video and finish off the trilogy with an example game that'll actually go through the questions and everything, then run through a few rounds, if not the entire game, just to give you a visual of what it actually looks like in action. But as fun as animations are, they take a lot of time to produce, so don't hold me to a timeline. I appreciate you guys sitting through this video and hopefully the overview video. I hope to see you in another video in the future. Thank you.